Good morning. We are going to do a quick review of what we talked about yesterday or 2 days ago, and then we'll move on to our new stuff. So, the solution to a quadratic equation is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. How many solutions does each graph have? Well, this one never crosses that line, so it has no solutions. This one, the vertex crosses in that one place, so it has one solution. And this one crosses in two places, so it has two solutions. And those are our roots. So we have two ways so far we know about of how we can find where it crosses. We can factor to find the solution. We can graph the parabola to find the solution, or, wait for it, we can use the quadratic formula. Dun, dun, dun. So your quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac Oliver 2a. So we are going to use the quadratic formula to find the answers to this problem. The first thing we need to do is figure out what a, b, and c are. And remember when we had we had ax squared plus bx plus c. So my a would be whatever's in front here, b, and c. So a equals 1, b equals negative 2, and c equals negative 24. So now we're just going to take all of that information and plug it into our formula. X equals, start out with the negative. We do negative 2, because that's what our b is, plus or minus, I'll explain that in a second, the square root, negative 2, because that's what our b is, squared, minus 4. Our a is 1. Our c is negative 24. Oliver 2 times 1. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is type all of this stuff, negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 24. Don't use the square root, but just type all of that mess into your calculator. Straight up, parentheses and everything exactly how it's written. When you do that, you should end up with x. We have a negative and a negative, so we can make that a positive. So x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of, when you type this stuff in, you should have got 100 all over 2 times 1 is 2. From here, we need to find the square root of 100. Everybody knows where that is on your calculator. Square root of 100 is 10. So I'm just going to keep going. X equals this, 2 plus or minus the square root of 100 is 10 all over 2. Now, we have this plus and minus. That means I'm going to split my problem into two separate problems, and we'll get two answers. So I'm going to have x equals 2 plus 10 divided by 2, and x equals 2 plus, 2 minus 10 divided by 2. Wow, sorry guys. Okay, 2 plus 10 is 12. If I do 12 divided by 2, this one turns out to be 6. And 2 minus 10 is negative 8 Divide that by 2, and I get a -4. So the two answers, the two solutions for this inside squiggles, 6, -4. Now I'm going to do the next problem. The first thing I have to do with this problem, though, is set it equal to 0, which means I got to subtract 6. 24x squared minus 14x minus 6 equals 0. Got to figure out my A, 24. My B is -14, and my C is -6. All right, let's have some fun. X equals negative. I got a -14 plus or minus square root -24 squared I'm sorry, that should be -14 squared. -14 squared minus 4 times 24 times -6. All over 2 times 24. All right, let's do what's in here. And we're going to go ahead and change two negatives to a positive. So that leaves me with x equals 14 plus or minus the square root of 772 all over 48. Now, the square root of 772 is 27.784887898, which is not pretty. So I'm going to go ahead and split it into my two problems from here. X equals 14 plus square root of 772 over 48. And x equals 14 minus square root of 772 over 48. All right, when I put this whole thing in my calculator and that whole thing in my calculator, I come up with x is approximately 0.9, or x is approximately -0.3. And those are your two root solutions for that equation. Devin, this part's for you. So, the part of the quadratic formula under the radical sign is called the discriminant. Discriminant. I'm trying to draw a hyphen there. Okay, which means that our discriminant is this part right here. B squared minus 4AC. So, if I have this problem, 2x plus squared plus 10x plus 11, I've got my A is 2, my B is 10, and my C is 11. So, my discriminant, all I'm going to want to know is b squared, 10 squared. That looks terrible. Let's try that again. 10 squared, b squared, minus 4 times 2 times 11. And if I put that into my calculator, I get 12. So, that would be the number under the radical sign now, is a 12. Why is that important? Well, then the discriminant can tell you the number of real roots or solutions in a quadratic equation. So, let me show you my examples. If your discriminant is a negative number, your graph will look like this. I hope it looks better than that. It doesn't touch the y-axis, which means there are no roots. It's a rule. Negative discriminant doesn't touch, no roots. If you get a 0 under the radical, it means it just touches it in one place, means you will have one root. If you get a positive number under the radical with your b squared minus 4ac, it means it touches in two places, and you'll have two roots. So we're going to do some practice ones now. This is the one I just did up top, and we ended up with 10 squared minus 4 times 2 times 11. It's just above those pictures, and that equaled 12. 12 is a positive number, so that tells me that there will be two roots or solutions for this equation. This next one, a equals 4, b equals negative 20, and c equals 25. So when I write that out, I got to be careful to use, why did I write 12 and I said 20? There. Oh my gosh. Okay, be sure to use parentheses. Negative 20 squared minus 4 times 4 times 25. Negative 20 squared is 400, minus 4 times 4 is 20, times 25 is 400. 400 minus 400 is 0. If my answer is a 0, it means there is one root to that problem. This last one here, I've got my 3x squared, so my a is a 3. Let me add this 2 real quick. My bad. So I got 3x squared plus 4m plus 2 equals 0. A is 3, b is 4, c is 2. So that gives me 4 squared minus 4 times 3 times 2, 16 minus 24. That gives me a negative 8, which means if I have a negative, there will be no roots in that one. Get to work.